Mafia boss agreed to fake wedding for power. Then rich girl whispered, "But this is real." The flashbulb was a physical assault, a pop of heat and white light that made Isabel Marquette flinch. The smile, her public armor, remained fixed, but her insides felt brittle. "Isn't she a delight?" Senator Harold Marquette beamed, his voice echoing with a bourbon-soaked camaraderie that never reached his eyes. His hand was a heavy, proprietary weight on the bare silk of her back, guiding her, pushing her, toward another donor. My Isabel, smart as a whip, but her real passion is her charity work. A real asset, Senator. The donor, a real estate developer whose eyes lingered too long, took her hand. He did not shake it, he held it, turning it over slowly, as if assessing livestock. Isabel stood frozen in the stifling air of the campaign fundraiser, a room too small for the desperation it contained. This was her life, a curated exhibit. She was the political heiress, the polished accessory meant to soften her father's crumbling image. Harold was polling in the single digits, his dynasty bleeding relevance, and she was the last, most valuable commodity he had left to leverage. "Isabel is organizing a benefit for her children's art foundation next month," Harold continued, sliding an arm around her waist. "Perhaps you'd like to discuss a sponsorship, Jim? She's very persuasive." Isabel felt the familiar, cold humiliation wash over her. He made her passion sound like a hobby, a bake sale, when it was the only real thing she had. "I'd be happy to," Jim leered, his gaze dropping from her eyes to her mouth. She wanted to pull away, to hide, but the cameras were everywhere. Instead, she just smiled. The perfect, empty smile of Isabel Marquette, the girl who had everything and owned nothing. Across town, in the cavernous, vaulted hall of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Luca de Rossi understood the chill of being an outsider. He stood near a towering Roman statue, a glass of untouched champagne in his hand, watching the old money aristocrats of New York glide across the marble. They smiled at him, of course. They shook his hand, but their eyes slid past him. To them, he was not Luca de Rossi, CEO of de Rossi Holdings, the man who controlled the concrete, steel, and transport that kept their city breathing. He was Luca de Rossi, the son of a 5 Points enforcer. He was shipyard brawls, rumored bodies in the East River, and a name that smelled of garlic and gunpowder. He was new money, dirty money. "Mr. Vance," Luca said, his voice a low, smooth gravel as he intercepted a city council president. "I was hoping we could discuss the zoning permits for the West Side development." Vance, a man whose family had been stealing legally for 200 years, gave him a thin, polite smile. "Ah, Mr. de Rossi, a complex issue. My office is reviewing the environmental impact reports." It was a dismissal, wrapped in bureaucracy. "My reports are clean," Luca said, holding the man's gaze. He did not plead, he stated facts. "My bids are 10% lower than Apex." "Yes. Well, Apex has a long-standing relationship with the city." Vance cleared his throat, already looking for an escape. "We value consistency. If you'll excuse me." Luca watched him scurry away toward a cluster of laughing politicians. The rage was a cold, familiar stone in his gut. He could buy and sell these men 3 times over, yet they treated him like a thug in a $5,000 suit. "They smell the street on you." Luca didn't turn. His consigliere, Marco Vieri, materialized at his elbow, indistinguishable from the other gray-haired men in tuxedos, save for the predatory intelligence in his eyes. "They take my money for their campaigns," Luca murmured, "but they won't let me sit at their table." "Because you are a threat they cannot control," Marco said softly. "And because the FBI is breathing down our necks, this RICO investigation. They are serious this time. They are squeezing your legitimate partners. They want to choke you off from the sunlight." Luca turned his head slightly. "So we move deeper into the shadows." "No," Marco countered. "We buy the sun. You cannot force these men to respect you. Luca, you must become them, or at least marry one of them." Luca stiffened. "I'm not a prince in a fairy tale, Marco? No, you're a king without a crown. Look at them." Marco nodded toward the floor. Power in this world is not just money. It is access. It is bloodlines. It is legitimacy. You need a shield. You need a name that opens doors the name DeRossi will always have slammed in its face. The FBI cannot easily seize the assets of a political dynasty. Luca hated the logic. He hated the weakness it implied. Who? Senator Harold Marquette. Luca almost laughed. Marquette? He's a walking corpse. He has nothing. He has debts. Debts I've spent the last 6 months acquiring. And he has one thing that is still considered priceless. Marco paused. He has a daughter. The introduction happened 3 nights later at a charity auction for the very art foundation Harold Marquette had dismissed. This was a different crowd. Higher stakes, older money, and blinding camera flashes. Isabel was standing near a modern sculpture, trying to have a real conversation with a museum curator, when her father's hand once again found her back. "Darling, there's someone I want you to meet." She turned. Her smile practiced, and it faltered. The man before her was not one of her father's usual associates. He was tall, dressed in a suit so dark it seemed to absorb the light in the room. He was brutally handsome, with a face that looked carved from granite, all hard planes and sharp angles, but it was his eyes that held her. They were dark, intelligent, and utterly still. He was not looking at her. He was reading her. "Isabel, this is Mr. Luca DeRossi," Harold said, his voice oily with false enthusiasm. "Mr. DeRossi is one of New York's most generous and private philanthropists. He's taken a great interest in your foundation. Luca DeRossi." She knew the name. Everyone did. The papers called him the Shadow of the Shipyards. "Miss Marquette," he said. His voice was deep, and it vibrated with a dangerous calm. He did not smile. He simply watched. "Mr. DeRossi." She extended a cool hand when his fingers closed around hers. It was not a polite shake. It was an acquisition. A current, sharp and hot, shot up her arm. It was not the slimy touch of her father's donors. It was possession, control. She pulled her hand back smoothly, refusing to let him see the jolt. "Your work with the downtown shelters is impressive," he said. She was startled. He had done his research. "Thank you. We find art provides an essential voice for children who feel they do not have one." "A voice," he repeated, his gaze intense, as if the word itself had meaning to him, a valuable commodity. An auctioneer called for attention. The bidding for the centerpiece item, a 19th century landscape, was beginning. "If you'll excuse us," Harold said, already steering her away. Luca did not try to stop them, but Isabel felt his eyes on her back. A physical weight. Long after she had disappeared into the crowd, the summons came 2 days later. Not a request, but a statement. A black car, silent and imposing, arrived at her small art studio downtown. The driver, a mountain in a suit, simply said, "Mr. DeRossi asks for a moment of your time, Miss Marquette." She knew, with a terrifying certainty, that it was not optional. She found him in his penthouse office, a space that felt more like a modern fortress than a home. It was all glass, steel, and shades of gray, with a staggering, godlike view of Central Park. Luca stood by the window, not in a suit, but in a simple black cashmere sweater and dark trousers. He looked less like a businessman and more like a panther surveying his territory. "Miss Marquette, thank you for coming. I'm not sure I was given a choice," she replied, her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She would not be intimidated. She had been dealing with bullies her entire life. He turned, and a flicker of something, respect, perhaps, passed through his dark eyes. "No, you were not." He did not offer her a drink. He did not ask her to sit. He gestured to the city below them. "Your father's world," he said. "They built all this. They made the rules, and they are dying. My father's world," his voice hardened, "built this city with their hands, and men like yours called them animals. Why am I here? Mr. DeRossi? Because your father is going to prison. Miss Marquette." The words hit her like cold water. "What?" "He's been misappropriating campaign funds for over a decade. He has debts to entities that are unforgiving. I know, because I own those debts now. The FBI knows, because someone anonymously supplied them with the proof. His career is over. He will be indicted within the month. Isabel sank into one of the gray leather chairs, her legs suddenly weak. She felt nothing. Not grief, not shock, just a vast, cold emptiness. It was over. And when he falls, Luca continued, moving to stand in front of her, he will pull you down with him. The scandal will destroy your foundation. The creditors will seize your inheritance, your apartment, everything. You will be toxic. You will be penniless. You will be him. She looked up at him. This terrifying, controlled man. You did this. I did. He did not apologize. Why are you telling me? She whispered. Because I am offering you an alternative. He leaned down, bracing his hands on the arms of her chair, trapping her in his intense gravity. His scent was clean, expensive soap, and something metallic. I need something only you have, legitimacy, your name, your access to the world that shuns me. I need a political shield. The De Rossi name is a target. The Marquette name, for all its current trouble, is still royalty in this city. The FBI will not risk the political fallout of attacking Senator Marquette's new son-in-law, not while they are investigating the senator himself. She stared at him, the pieces clicking into place. You want to marry me? I want a contract, he clarified, his voice dropping to a raw whisper. A business arrangement, a fake marriage. You will be my wife in public. You will attend galas, shake hands, and smile. You will be the beautiful, untouchable Mrs. De Rossi. In return, I will give you your freedom. Freedom, she scoffed. In a cage designed by you? A cage? He laughed, a short, harsh sound. You are in a cage right now, Miss Marquette. Your father owns you. The donors paw at you. The media stalks you. That is a cage. He stood up, walking back to the window. Marry me. Your father will not touch you. His debts will be forgotten. Your foundation will be funded, endowed for the next 50 years. You will have my name and my protection. No one, he said, the word ringing with absolute authority, will ever lay a hand on you, or look at you, or speak to you in any way you do not wish. You will be free of him, and you will be safe. She was trading one master for another, but this master, he was offering her the one thing her father never had, respect. What? What do you expect from me? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. In private, he looked at her, his expression unreadable. Nothing. You will have your own suite. You will live your own life. This is a transaction, not a romance. We will be partners, not lovers. Our only intimacy will be for the cameras. She stood up, walking toward him, her mind racing. This was insane, but it was also a door, a way out of the suffocating, predictable ruin of her life. I have conditions, she said, amazed at her own audacity. He inclined his head. I'm listening. My foundation. I run it. No interference. You fund it, as you said, but my name remains on it. Alone. Done. My independence. My art studio. My time. I will attend your events, but I will not be your property. I will not be paraded. You will be my wife, he corrected, his voice firm. And my wife is not property. She is the queen. You will be treated as such. That is my condition. She took a deep breath. One last thing. 1 year. After 1 year, we quietly annul the marriage. No fault. We part ways. Luca watched her, a long, assessing silence stretching between them. He saw the steel beneath her porcelain fragility. She was not breaking. She was negotiating. 1 year, he agreed. The contract will be drawn up. The signing took place in a sterile, high-rise lawyer's office 3 days later. The contract was thick, detailing every clause. Public appearances, minimum twice weekly. Residences shared but with private quarters. Code of conduct, mutual respect in public, total separation in private. Infidelity, grounds for immediate dissolution, with severe financial penalties for him, none for her. And the last clause, no intimacy required or expected. Annulment to be filed 366 days after the ceremony. Isabel signed her name, her hand perfectly steady. Luca signed his. His signature was sharp, aggressive and final. The lawyers gathered the papers, their faces impassive. It was done. Isabel stood, smoothing her skirt. "Well, my fiancé," the word tasted like ash in her mouth. "My fiancé," he replied, his tone equally flat. She turned and walked out of the conference room without looking back. Luca remained, watching her go. He watched the straight, proud line of her back, the deliberate way she held her head high, even as she walked out of a room where she had just sold herself. He had won. He had a shield. He had the Marquette name. So why did he feel a sudden, unfamiliar sickness in his stomach? It was a strange, softening sensation he could not identify. It felt almost like guilt. The media frenzy was immediate and spectacular. The whirlwind engagement between mafia royalty and the political princess dominated every news cycle. It was the ultimate New York story. Power, crime, and aristocracy colliding. Pictures of them at the auction. His dark intensity. Her fragile beauty were splashed across the front pages. Harold Marquette, caught completely off guard, was forced to release a statement of overjoyed blessing for his daughter, even as the first whispers of his financial investigation began to leak. Isabel felt like she was watching a movie of someone else's life. The day she moved into Luca's penthouse was gray and cold. She arrived with 3 suitcases, mostly filled with books and art supplies. The penthouse was stunning, filled with priceless art, but it was silent as a tomb. Armed men, polite but built like refrigerators, stood in the main foyer and by the elevators, a bird in a cage. She thought again, just a much larger, more expensive cage. Luca was waiting for her in the vast white living room. "This way," he said, picking up one of her heavier bags himself before a guard could move. He led her up a floating glass staircase to the 2nd floor, down a private hallway. He opened a set of double doors. "This will be your suite. The security panel is keyed only to your fingerprint. No one, including me, can enter without your permission." She stepped inside. It was not a bedroom. It was an apartment within the apartment. A bedroom, a large marble bathroom, a sitting room, and, through another door, a massive studio space. The studio was empty, save for an easel, a drawing table, and several large, blank canvases. The entire north wall was glass, flooding the room with the soft, clear light she loved. She turned to him, stunned. "You said you needed your independence," he stated. Setting her bag down, he did not enter the room, but stood in the doorway. "You cannot create if you feel watched. The glass is polarized. No one can see in. Not even from the opposite building." She looked at the canvases, then at this complex, dangerous man. He had listened in all their negotiations. He had heard the one thing she had not said aloud. She needed a place to be real. "Thank you," she said, the words quiet. He gave a curt nod, his expression unreadable. "We have the engagement party in 3 days. Marco will coordinate with your assistant regarding the press. Get some rest." He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at her. She was standing in the middle of the empty room, looking small and overwhelmed, her hands clutching the strap of her purse. A flicker of that same unwanted softness passed through him. "Isabel," he said. She looked up, startled he had used her first name. "The first rule is the only rule that matters," he said, his voice low. "You are a de Rossi now. You are mine to protect. No one will hurt you here, ever." He turned and walked away, his footsteps silent on the thick carpet, leaving her alone in the quiet, surrounded by glass and steel, and the first terrifying breath of freedom. Luca's world was one of stark, brutal contrasts. The first time he took her to one of his business meetings, it was in the back room of a nondescript restaurant in Queens. The room smelled of stale wine and fear. She sat on a plush banquette, a glass of water untouched before her, and watched him dismantle a man's life. It was a union boss who had been skimming from a construction project. Luca did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply laid out a series of photographs and balance sheets on the table. "You have been stealing from my family." "Antonio," he said, his voice a low, calm vibration. "You've been doing it for 6 months. You thought we would not notice." The man, 50 pounds heavier than Luca and sweating through his suit, was shrinking. "Luca, I swear, it was a misunderstanding. The books are perfect," Luca interrupted, sliding a final photo across the table. It was a picture of the man's teenage daughter, walking out of her high school. She has a beautiful smile. It would be a shame to see it fade. The man went white. Isabel felt her stomach clench. This was not the polite, veiled cruelty of her father's world. This was the cold, sharp edge of a blade. Luca leaned back. His work done. "You will replace every dollar. You will add 20% for my time, and you will resign. My man, Enzo, will take your place." The man nodded, his eyes wet. "Yes, of course. Luca, thank you." Luca stood, smoothing his cuffs. He turned to Isabel, and the ice in his eyes vanished, replaced by that same unsettling gentleness. He held out his hand. "Are you hungry? We can go." She placed her hand in his, her fingers trembling, and allowed him to lead her out into the sunlight. The whiplash was terrifying. He was a monster who held doors. He was a shark who checked to make sure she was warm enough. But his world was not just shadows. 2 days later, he took her to his mother's home in Brooklyn for Sunday dinner. The penthouse felt like a fortress. This felt like a home. It was loud, smelled of garlic and roasting meat, and was filled with people. "Isabel, this is my mother, Elena," Luca said, his arm resting possessively on the small of her back. Elena de Rossi was a small, formidable woman in a black dress, her gray hair in a tight bun. She studied Isabel with eyes as dark and shrewd as her son's. She took Isabel's hands in hers. Hers were rough, papery skin over strong knuckles. "So, you are the politician's girl," Elena said. It was not a question. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Mrs. de Rossi," Elena humphed. "Mrs. de Rossi, you will call me Nona, like everyone else. You are too thin. Luca, she does not eat." "I am trying, Ma," Luca said, and Isabel was stunned to hear the hint of tired affection in his voice. "You are not trying. You are working," another voice cut in. A young woman with Luca's eyes and a sharp, modern haircut stepped forward, wiping her hands on an apron. "Hi, I'm Sophia, the sister, the one he actually listens to." "This is Isabel," Luca said, his introduction softer. "I know who she is," Sophia said, her smile bright but her eyes assessing. "The whole city knows. I did not think you were real." "I assure you, I am," Isabel said, finding her footing. "Good, he needs someone real." Sophia looked her up and down. "That dress is couture. You will ruin it. Come. Nona will find you an apron. You can help chop vegetables. If you are going to marry my brother, you must learn to chop." For the next 3 hours, Isabel was pulled into the warm, chaotic gravity of the de Rossi family. She learned that Luca had built this house for his mother. She learned that he personally funded Sophia's entire graduate degree in finance, and that he called them both every single night before he went to sleep. She watched him argue with his mother in rapid-fire Italian, saw him laugh, a real, unguarded laugh. When Sophia told a story, this was the man behind the reputation. A man who was fiercely, dangerously protective of what he loved. He was not just a boss, he was a son and a brother. And for some reason, that made him infinitely more dangerous to her. Their engagement party was designed to be the public merging of their two worlds. It was held at the top of a skyscraper, a glittering, soulless room filled with politicians, billionaires, and the nervous, whispering elite. Isabel was back in her armor, a dress of liquid silver, her smile polite, her hand resting lightly on Luca's arm. This was the performance, and she knew her role. "He's terrifying, isn't he?" a voice slurred next to her. She turned. Balthazar Vance, the son of the council president Luca had confronted at the museum. Balthazar, Balti to his set, was drunk, privileged, and oozing contempt. "Mr. Vance," Isabel said, her smile tightening. "Please, we are almost family," he sneered, his eyes raking over her. "I must say, Isabel, this is a bold move, even for a Marquette. Trading your father's sinking ship for a pirate's." Luca, who'd been speaking with Marco, went utterly still. "I heard he bought you. Straight from your father's failing auction, Balthazar continued, emboldened by Luca's silence. Is the concrete dust hard to get out of the silk? Isabel felt the blood drain from her face. It was the same humiliation, the same feeling of being nothing but an object for sale. Before she could speak, Luca moved. It was not fast. It was a deliberate, lethal glide. He did not punch Balthazar. He did not yell. He simply placed his left hand flat on the man's chest. His fingers splayed over his heart. Balthazar froze. The entire room seemed to suck in a breath. "You will apologize to my fiancé," Luca said. His voice was not loud. It was a dead-level whisper that cut through the music, the chatter, everything. I was just joking. "Derossi," Balthazar stammered, his bravado crumbling. Luca's hand pressed harder. That was not an apology. "Luca, it's fine," Isabel whispered, tugging at his arm. He did not look at her. His eyes, black and flat as chips of obsidian, were locked on Balthazar. I'm sorry," Balthazar choked out, his eyes wide with a very real, very sudden fear. "I apologize. Isabel. Miss Marquette. Mrs. Derossi," Luca corrected him. "Her name is Mrs. Derossi. Now you will leave my home, and if I ever hear you speak her name again, I will break your jaw. Do you understand me?" "Yes," Balthazar whispered. He turned and practically fled the party. Luca watched him go, his chest rising and falling slowly. He turned back to the room, which was pretending not to have seen. He adjusted his tie. Then he looked at Isabel. He took her hand, the one that was clenched into a fist at her side, and slowly unfurled her fingers. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a public, tender gesture that was a declaration of war. "No one," he murmured, "for her ears only, speaks to you that way." His protectiveness felt more real, more potent than anything she had ever known, and it terrified her. Later that night, she could not sleep. The adrenaline from the party was still thrumming through her. She left her suite and went to the one place in the penthouse that felt open, the rooftop terrace. The city was a universe of glittering lights below. She wrapped her arms around herself, the cold air biting through her thin robe. "You should not be out here. It is cold." She turned. Luca stood in the doorway, barefoot, wearing only a pair of black silk pajama bottoms. His chest was bare, a roadmap of faint, old scars and defined muscle. "I could not sleep," she said, her voice small. He walked over to her, grabbing a thick cashmere blanket from a chair and wrapping it around her shoulders. His fingers brushed her neck, and she flinched at the jolt of his touch. He stepped back, respecting her space. "What he said tonight. It was not the first time I've heard something like that," she admitted, her voice hollow. "My father. He used to parade me at his fundraisers. He called me his secret weapon, the one who could persuade donors, make them feel good." She looked down at her hands. "I felt so dirty. I felt like an object, just a tool he used to get what he wanted." She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Tonight, when that man said I was bought, it was the first time in my life someone told him he was wrong." Luca watched her, his expression hard to read in the moonlight. The wind whipped his dark hair. "My father," he said, his voice rough, "used to use his fists to get what he wanted. He used them on my mother. He used them on me." He touched a faint, silvery scar just above his collarbone. "I was 7 years old. He broke my collarbone because I spilled a glass of wine. I learned then, you never let them see you as a tool. You never let them see you as weak. You become the one who holds the hammer." It was the most he had ever told her about himself. A raw, painful piece of his past, offered in the cold darkness. "You are not weak, Isabel," he said, his voice so low she almost missed it. "You are the strongest person in this penthouse. You survived them, and you will never be a tool again." He did not touch her. He just stood there, sharing the cold, dark air with her, a silent, scarred guardian. The fragile piece shattered 4 days later. Isabel was at her studio, the one place that was hers, the one place she felt sane. She was painting. lost in a blur of charcoal and raw sienna. When she felt it, the sense of being watched, she looked down at the street. 4 floors below, a black sedan, non-specific, was parked across the road. It had been there for 2 hours. A chill, different from the rooftop cold, snaked down her spine. She called the car service Luca insisted she use. When her driver arrived, the black sedan pulled out, following them at a legal, patient distance. She made it to the penthouse, her heart pounding. When she told the head of Luca's security, Enzo, the man's face went blank. He made a call. 2 minutes later, Luca burst through the doors of her studio. He was not calm. His eyes were blazing. "Where?" he demanded. I am fine. Luca, they just followed me. Where were they parked? What did you see? Did they approach you? He was firing questions, his hands clenched. Across the street, a black sedan. I did not get the plates. Luca, I am fine. It was probably just paparazzi. Paparazzi do not use unmarked cars with government-issued tires, he snapped. He was already on his phone, speaking in harsh Italian. Find them. Find out who they are. I want 5 men on this building. I want 2 on her, at all times. She does not go anywhere without an escort. Not to the bathroom. Not anywhere. He hung up and turned to her. No, she said, backing away. This is not a negotiation. You promised me independence, she cried, the fear finally turning to anger. This studio was my space, my one place. You cannot put your men here. You cannot lock me up. I will not let you get hurt, he roared, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings. You are my fiancé. You carry my name. That makes you a target. Do you think this is a game? I think this is the cage you promised it would not be, she shouted back, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. I am not one of your possessions you can lock in a safe. He stalked toward her, his face a mask of cold fury. You are mine. You are mine to protect. You will not be safe, so you will be guarded. I hate this. I hate you, she yelled, her control finally breaking. She shoved him, her hands flat against his chest. It was like shoving a marble wall. He grabbed her wrists, his grip like steel. You think I care about your hate? I care about your breathing. Let go of me, she struggled, but he was too strong. Stop fighting me, he commanded, pulling her closer, his face inches from hers. She could feel the heat rolling off him, see the raw, violent emotion swirling in his dark eyes. Or what? Luca, are you going to hit me? Like your father? The words were out before she could stop them. They struck him harder than her hands ever could. His face went pale, his grip faltered, and in that moment of shocked silence, with her breathing ragged and his eyes full of a sudden, dark pain, the tension snapped. He did not let her go. He crashed his mouth down on hers. It was not a kiss. It was an explosion. It was all his rage, his fear, his control, breaking at once. His grip on her wrists loosened, his hands moving to her face, tangling in her hair, holding her captive as his mouth devoured hers. It was punishing, desperate, and utterly consuming. Isabel's shock lasted only a second. She fought back, her mouth pushing against his, her hands coming up to his chest, but the anger was so close to this other, terrifying feeling. The man who had protected her, the man who had shown her his scars, was now kissing her with a savage need she had never known. Her anger melted into a confusing, electric heat. She stopped fighting. Her lips softened. She kissed him back. Her hands, which had been pushing him away, fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. It was fire and confusion, a desperate clash of 2 people who were not supposed to be real. He deepened the kiss, a groan of pure, animalistic frustration tearing from his chest. He backed her against the wall, his body pressing into hers, and she met his intensity, her entire world narrowing to this single, catastrophic point of contact. Then, just as suddenly as it began, he tore himself away. He stumbled back, breathing heavily, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and disbelief. He looked at her swollen lips and dazed expression, and his face hardened into a cold, remote mask. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, as if wiping her away. This, he said, his voice like ice, will not happen again. The guards will be outside your door in 5 minutes. She stared at him, her heart broken, her body aching with a want she did not understand. "Luca, this is fake. Remember," he said, his words a cold, cruel slap. "It is a contract. Do not forget it again." He turned and left her studio, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed in the sudden, terrible silence. Isabel slid down the wall, her legs giving out, and buried her face in her hands, her world completely undone. Miles away, in a dark, wood-paneled office, Senator Harold Marquette looked at a private investigator. "I do not care what it costs," Harold said, his voice thick with resentment. "He took my daughter. He's destroying my name. Find something. Find anything. Find something to break him." Late that night, in his own office, Lucas sat in the darkness, watching a wall of security monitors. He watched her. He watched her in her studio, saw her angrily throw a brush, saw her finally collapse onto the small sofa. He watched her until she cried herself to sleep. He found himself obsessively tracking her movements, a sick, protective knot in his stomach that had nothing to do with the contract. Isabel did not stay in the penthouse, a prisoner of his making. The next morning, bruised and silent, she bypassed the new guards at her door. She took her driver and went to the downtown shelter she had supported for years. She spent the day in the basement, surrounded by the smell of turpentine and cheap paint, teaching children how to mix colors, how to make something beautiful out of nothing. She needed to remember who she was. She was not a politician's pawn. She was not a mafia boss's wife. She was Isabel. And she was not, she promised herself, going to break. The silence between them had become a third person in the penthouse, a cold, watchful guest. After the kiss, after his brutal rejection, Luca had doubled the guard outside her studio. He had not come near her. They had not spoken a word in 6 days. They communicated through his consigliere, Marco, who informed Isabel they were required to attend a fundraiser for the governor. It was, Marco explained, a vital show of unity, a way to present their engagement as a stable, unshakable alliance. Isabel felt like a doll being moved from one box to another. She put on a deep emerald green dress, a color that made her look pale and regal. She fastened the diamonds Luca had sent to her room, a cold, beautiful apology she had left in its velvet box, and met him by the elevator. He was magnificent in a black tuxedo, his face an impenetrable mask of stone. He looked at her, his eyes lingering for a beat on her lips before moving to the necklace. "It suits you," he said, his voice a flat, empty sound. "Thank you," she replied. Just as cold, the car ride was suffocating. The air was thick with the things they could not say, the memory of his mouth on hers, his anger, his desperation. It was a live wire between them. The fundraiser was a sea of false smiles and clinking champagne glasses. Isabel played her part, her hand resting on Luca's arm, her smile fixed. They were the center of attention, the city's most dangerous and fascinating couple. She was speaking to a judge's wife when she heard her father's voice, amplified by a microphone. "And I thank you all for your support," Harold Marquette was saying, his face flushed with alcohol and a desperate, theatrical sincerity. "In these trying times, we see what people will do for power. We see the lines that are blurred. We see shall we say, the inconvenient alliances that are formed." A nervous titter went through the crowd. Isabel felt Luca's arm go rigid beneath her hand. "Father, please," she murmured, trying to pull him away, but Harold had seen her. He was playing to the room, to the reporters he knew were in the back. He smiled, a wet, ugly gesture. "We see. For instance," Harold boomed, "my own daughter, Isabel, a testament to loyalty, or perhaps a testament to a very good public relations strategy." The room went dead silent. "Harold, that's enough," the governor said, stepping toward the podium. No, let the man speak," Luca said, his voice soft, but it carried across the ballroom. He dropped his arm from Isabel's. Taking a step forward, Harold, emboldened, pointed a shaking finger at them. "She stands there, dripping in his blood money, pretending this is anything other than what it is, a PR stunt with criminals." He thinks he can buy my name, buy my legacy. He thinks he can buy my daughter. Isabel squeezed her eyes shut. The humiliation was so profound, so public, it stole her breath. She heard a gasp. She opened her eyes. Luca was no longer beside her. He had crossed the 10 feet to the podium in 2 silent, predatory strides. He did not say a word. He simply drew back his right fist and punched Harold Marquette square in the jaw. It was not a brawl. It was a sentence. The sound was a sickening, wet crack of bone and cartilage. Harold crumpled, unconscious before he hit the floor. Women screamed, champagne glasses shattered, photographers, their cameras suddenly alive, surged forward, their flashes exploding like gunfire. Luca stood over her father's prone body, breathing heavily. His knuckles split and bleeding. He looked, for a second, like the monster his father had raised. Enzo and 2 other guards materialized, forming a wall around him. "Boss, we have to go. Now." Luca turned, his eyes finding Isabel in the chaos. He was not angry. He was not cold. He was something else, something she could not read. He walked to her, took her arm in a grip that was not gentle, and said, "We are leaving." He pulled her through the panicking crowd, his men shoving reporters and security aside. They were in the private elevator, descending, before anyone could stop them. The ride down was silent. Isabel was shaking, her dress splattered with a single drop of her father's blood. In the lobby, they did not go to the waiting town car. A black armored SUV was idling at the curb. Enzo threw open the back door. "Get in, both of you." "Where are we going?" Isabel asked, her voice a thin thread. "Away," Luca said. He shoved her inside and climbed in after her. Just as the first reporters burst from the building, they drove for hours, leaving the city lights behind, speeding north into the darkness. Isabel said nothing. Luca stared out the window, his bleeding hand wrapped in a white handkerchief. He had not looked at her once. Finally, the SUV turned off the highway onto a dark, unpaved road that wound through a thick forest. The vehicle stopped in front of a house that seemed to be made of shadows, all dark wood and stone, set against the black, glittering surface of a massive lake. "Go inside," Luca said. "The door is open." "Oh, what about—" "The men are staying at the gatehouse, a mile back. Go." Isabel got out, her silver heels sinking into the damp earth. She walked into the house. It was warm. A single lamp was on, illuminating a huge, rustic living room dominated by a cold stone fireplace. Luca entered behind her, shrugging off his tuxedo jacket. He tossed it onto a chair. He was still wearing his black bow tie, his white shirt stained with his own blood. "Where are we?" she asked. "My lake house," he said, his back to her. He walked to a wet bar and poured 2 thick fingers of amber liquid into a glass. "No one knows this place exists. We will lie low here for a few days, until Marco fixes that." "You hit him," she said, stating the obvious. He downed the drink in one swallow, the glass clicking as he set it down. "Yes, you did it. For me," she whispered. He turned around slowly. His face was exhausted. The mask was gone. "He humiliated you. He called you a commodity. He sold you. And then he shamed you for it. I will not allow that." He was breathing hard, as if the punch had cost him something more than a split knuckle. "Luca, go to bed, Isabel. It has been a long night. Upstairs. First door on the right, it is clean." He turned back to the bottle, dismissing her, hurt and confused. She fled up the stairs. She woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke. She had fallen asleep in her dress, the diamonds cold against her skin. She unfastened the necklace and left it on the nightstand. She walked downstairs, barefoot. Luca was standing in the kitchen, feeding logs into a large, cast-iron stove. He had taken off his ruined shirt and was wearing a plain gray Henley that clung to his shoulders. His hair was a mess. He looked up when she entered. The silence of the previous night was still there, but it felt different, less angry, more awkward. "I made coffee," he said, nodding to a pot. "I do not have any clothes," she said. He stared at her for a beat, as if just realizing this. He walked to a hook by the door and pulled off a thick, dark flannel shirt. "Here, it will be big. There is a bathroom through there." She took the shirt. It was heavy, and it smelled of him, cedar, and the faint, metallic tang of his blood from the night before. She changed in the bathroom, rolling the sleeves up. The shirt fell to her mid-thigh, a ridiculously intimate garment. When she came back, he had set out 2 mugs. I can cook," she offered, needing to do something with her hands. "If you have food." He nodded toward the pantry. "Stocked once a month." For the next 2 hours, they moved around the small kitchen. Not as a boss and his fake fiancé, but as 2 people. They made an omelet. They burned the toast. He told her where the pans were. She asked him to get the eggs. And then she made a joke about the burnt toast, and he laughed. It was the same, unguarded laugh she had heard at his mother's house. She found herself smiling. A real, genuine smile. They ate at a rough wooden table, the lake placid and gray outside the window. "This is the first time I have been out of the city in maybe a year," she admitted, cupping the warm mug. "No cameras, no bodyguards." "There are no guards," he said. "Just Enzo at the gate, and he has his orders not to come near. No one is here. No cameras, no one." The thought was both terrifying and liberating. They spent the day in a strange, quiet truce. They walked by the lake, the air cold and clean. She wore a pair of his old boots she found by the door. He watched her, his expression intense. He watched her bend down to skip a stone. He watched her laugh when it sank immediately. He was watching her. She realized, not as an asset or a contract or a marquette. He was watching her as her... That night, a storm rolled in. The wind howled and rain lashed against the windows. Luca built a fire in the massive stone fireplace, the flames casting a warm, dancing light over the room. They sat on a thick rug, sharing a bottle of red wine he had opened. The house was filled with the sound of the fire and the storm. "You should not have hit him," she said quietly, staring into the flames. "Yes, I should have," he replied, his voice a low rumble. "It will make everything worse. For you. The investigations." "I do not care about the investigations." He took a drink of wine. "There is only one thing I care about." And he insulted it. She looked at him. "You mean the contract?" "Your shield." His eyes met hers, and they were dark with a raw, unspoken emotion. "No, I mean you." The silence stretched, filled only by the crackle of the logs. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" Lucas stared into the fire, his jaw tight. "You asked me that night, in the studio, if I was like my father." Isabel winced. "Luca, I am sorry. I was angry." "You were right to ask," he said, his voice rough. "My father. He was a weak man who used his fists to feel strong. He drank. He hit my mother. He hit me. He hit Sophia. Once..." Luca's hand tightened around his glass. "She was 3. He backhanded her for crying. I was 9. I took a knife from the kitchen. I told him if he ever touched her again, I would kill him in his sleep." He let out a long, shaky breath. "He believed me. He never touched her again, but he turned on me. Every night until I was 15, and I was finally big enough to break his arm. He left, and I never saw him again." He looked at Isabel, his eyes hollow with the memory. "I built everything I have so that my mother and my sister would never be afraid again. I became the man people fear, so they would be safe. I do not trust softness. Isabel, softness is what gets you hurt. It is what gets the people you love hurt." He unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his Henley and pulled the collar aside, revealing the scar he had shown her on the rooftop. It was a pale, jagged line just above his collarbone. "He did this with a broken bottle," he whispered, "because I asked for money to buy my mother medicine. I learned that night. You do not ask. You take. You do not love. You own. You do not feel. You control." Isabel's heart felt like it was breaking. She saw it all. The boy with the knife. The monster in the back room. The man who kissed her with such desperate, angry passion. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and gently, so gently, traced the line of his scar. His skin was hot. He flinched, but he did not pull away. His entire body was rigid, braced for a blow. She leaned in, her hair brushing his chest, and she pressed her lips to the scar. A sound, half groan, half sob, tore from his throat. "But you are not that man now," she whispered against his skin. He looked down at her, his eyes wild, desperate. He was lost. "Isabel," he breathed, his voice breaking. It was a plea. She rose to her knees in front of him and touched his face, her thumb brushing over his cheekbone. "It is all right, Luca. It is all right to be soft." He grabbed her hand, his grip tight, crushing, and pressed his mouth to her palm. He kissed her skin, his eyes squeezed shut, as if in agony. And then he pulled her to him. His mouth found hers, and this time, there was no anger. It was all need. It was a desperate, drowning kind of kiss that was full of fear and a longing so deep it ached. He kissed her as if she were the only thing saving him from the dark. "This is not in the contract," he murmured, his forehead pressed against hers, his breath hot and unsteady. "I do not care about the contract," she whispered back. His hands went to her face, cradling her jaw, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. He looked at her, really looked at her, his eyes asking a question his words could not form. She answered by kissing him back, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. It was a slow, agonizingly tender exploration. Every touch was hesitant, then hungry. Every gesture was filled with a lifetime of unspoken want. He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, her borrowed flannel shirt riding up her thighs. He carried her from the rug to the large, soft sofa near the fire, never breaking the kiss. He laid her down, his body covering hers, his weight a comforting, possessive pressure. He looked down at her, his dark hair falling forward, his face illuminated by the firelight. He was beautiful, and he was broken, and he was hers. He slowly unbuttoned her shirt, his fingers unsteady. He did not rip it. He was achingly careful. He kissed the skin he revealed, her throat, her collarbone, the space just above her heart. She arched into his touch, her hands sliding under his shirt, her fingers splaying across the hot, hard skin of his back. She felt him shudder. This was not the fake, cold arrangement. This was real. This was a man who had never been touched with simple kindness, and a woman who had never been touched with simple, honest desire. It was slow. It was passionate. It was two fractured people finding a moment of peace in the storm. Every touch was a question, every kiss an answer. It was a raw, emotional collision, a desperate, silent promise not to be monsters. Not tonight. The next morning, Isabel woke up tangled in Luca's arms, the wool blanket and his flannel shirt. The fire was embers. The storm was over. The light in the room was gray and peaceful. His arm was a heavy, possessive weight over her waist. He was still asleep. His face, for the first time, completely at peace. The hard lines were gone, the tension erased. She watched him breathe. She was not afraid. She was not ashamed. She felt whole. She gently took his hand, the one that had punched her father, the one that had held her so tenderly. She intertwined her fingers with his. His eyes fluttered open. He looked at her, his gaze clearing, and she saw the panic return. The walls were coming back up. He was remembering who he was. Before he could pull away, before he could retreat into his cold fortress, she squeezed his hand. "This may have started fake," she said, her voice soft and certain in the quiet morning. "But this is real to me." His eyes widened. He stared at her, overwhelmed. This was the softness. This was the vulnerability he did not know how to fight. He said nothing. He ripped his hand from hers, as if she had burned him. He stood up abruptly, grabbing his trousers from the floor, his back to her. "Luca?" she asked, her voice small, and he did not answer. He pulled on his trousers and stalked out of the living room, out the front door, and into the cold morning air. Isabel watched from the window as he walked to the edge of the lake, his shoulders rigid. He stood there, staring at the water, a man trapped between the monster he was raised to be and the man he was terrified to become. She was giving him her heart, and he had just thrown it back. The ringing of a satellite phone, loud and abrasive, shattered the peace. It was in his discarded tuxedo jacket. Isabel found it and answered, "Hello? Where is he?" It was Marco. He sounded agitated. "He is outside. Marco, what is wrong? You need to get back. Now, that stunt at the fundraiser. It woke the dead, your father. He's not just pressing charges for assault." "What did he do?" Isabel asked, a cold dread creeping into her. "He is petitioning the court. He found some arcane, pre-war family law. He's claiming you are unstable, an unfit heir. He's moving to seize your entire inheritance, your trust, everything your mother left you." The front door opened. Luca stood there, his face pale, his eyes still haunted. Isabel looked at him, the phone in her hand. "He's trying to take everything." Luca's expression changed. The fear, the vulnerability, it all vanished. It was like a steel door slamming shut. The cold, dangerous calm returned. He walked over and took the phone from her hand. "Marco," he said, his voice flat, "get my lawyers ready. All of them." He hung up. He looked at Isabel, not as a lover, but as a king. "You are mine now," he said, his voice a blade. "Nobody touches what is mine." The ride back from the lake house was a silent, suffocating retreat. The man who had walked to the shore, desperate and broken, was gone. In his place was the king, the boss, the impenetrable Luca de Rossi. He had not spoken a word to her about what had happened. He had not touched her. He had simply put the armor back on, and in doing so, had handed Isabel hers. The softness was over. This was war. The penthouse office, which had once felt like a cage, now felt like a command center. Luca did not just bring his lawyers, he brought his soldiers. "Harold Marquette is no longer just an embarrassment," Luca stated, pacing the glass wall. His voice was cold, flat and final. Marco sat at the main desk, his fingers flying across a keyboard, bringing up encrypted files. "He is a liability. I want him gone." "The assault charge is public, Luca," Marco said, not looking up. "It makes us look volatile. His petition to seize her inheritance is filed, citing the assault as proof of an unstable environment. His petition is based on a morality clause from 1903, Luca sneered. Our response will be based on the 6 city council members he has had on his payroll since '98. I want their offshore accounts. I want the proof of the kickbacks from the zoning permits. Find the judge he paid to expedite this hearing. I want that judge's career. I want his pension." Isabel watched from the doorway, a mug of cold coffee in her hands. This was the man who ran the city. Surgical, brutal. He was dismantling her father, piece by piece. "We also have the other debts," Marco added, his voice low. "The casino markers?" "Yes, Atlantic City. He owes $400,000 to the Vitali family. They are displeased." "Buy the debt," Luca commanded, without a second of hesitation. "I want to own every piece of him. When I am done, he will not have enough money left for a subway token." "Luca," Isabel said, her voice cutting through the clinical precision. He turned to her. His eyes were hard. "What about the foundation?" she asked. "My work. He's naming my board members in his suit. He's trying to drag them down, too." "He is irrelevant," Luca said. "They are not irrelevant to me. They are good people." Luca paused. He looked at Marco. "The board members, shield them. Set up a new, independent fund. Transfer the endowment. Handle it. Today." He looked back at Isabel. It was not gentle, but it was an answer. While Luca moved his pieces around the city, Isabel tried to find normalcy. She tried to paint, but the studio, her one true sanctuary, felt different. The 2 guards outside the door were a constant, visible reminder that she was no longer her own. She was his, but she was not his. The lake house, the confession, his body tangled with hers, his panicked flight, it all played in her mind on a loop. He had rejected her heart, but he had declared war for her assets. It made her feel hollow. Her old phone, the one she kept in a drawer, rang, not the new encrypted device Luca insisted she carry, but her personal one. "Hello? Isabel Marquette?" The voice was male, smooth, and had a reptilian quality. "Who is this?" "A friend, a journalist. I am working on a story about New York's new fairy tale. the mafia boss and the senator's daughter. It is a fascinating narrative, but I seem to be missing a few pieces. Isabel's blood ran cold. I do not speak to the press. Oh, you will want to speak to me. The voice purred. See, I have documentation, a copy of it looks like a prenuptial agreement, but it reads like a business contract, a 1-year arrangement, an annulment date already set. It looks awfully fake. She sank onto her stool. What do you want? Meet me. We can talk, or maybe I will just publish. I also have some very interesting photographs of Luca de Rossi meeting with men the FBI would love to identify. And some very poignant photos of you, meeting with your father in secret. It almost looks like a conspiracy. You are working for my father, she whispered, the treachery stinging her. I am working for the truth, the man scoffed. And of course, the highest bidder. You have 24 hours to decide which bidder that is. The line went dead. She was not just a political pawn anymore. She was a weapon, and she was being aimed directly at Luca. They were required to go out. The punch had made headlines, and Luca's response was not to hide, but to project absolute, unbothered strength. They attended a gala at the Museum of Natural History, under the shadow of the great blue whale. Isabel was a wreck, the journalist's threat, her father's betrayal, and Luca's suffocating, cold distance. He stayed by her side, his hand a permanent, possessive weight on the small of her back. It was a warning to the entire room, but to her, it felt like a brand. She needed air. I will be right back, she murmured. She escaped to the ladies' lounge, a vast space of marble and muted lighting. She splashed cold water on her wrists, her reflection looking pale and haunted. The door opened, but it was not one of the governor's aides. It was a woman her own age, poured into a dress the color of blood, with eyes as black and sharp as Luca's. Isabelle Marquette, the woman said. It was not a question. Her voice was pure Brooklyn, coated in a venomous lacquer. I'm sorry, do I know you? You know my father. Antonio Vitale, the name, the casino debt. I am Serena. Serena Vitale took a step, blocking the only exit. She smiled, a gesture devoid of all warmth. You are making a mistake, Serena said. I do not know what you're talking about. Marrying him, Serena laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. My family and his... We have been at odds for a generation. Your father owed us a great deal of money, and then Luca, in his infinite arrogance, buys the debt. He thinks he is a king, rearranging the board. She leaned in, her expensive perfume suffocating Isabel. I'm here to tell you something, princess. This is not politics. Being his wife means inheriting his enemies, and he has enemies you cannot even imagine. We do not do scandals. We do funerals. Isabel's heart hammered, but a cold rage, born of her father's auctions and Luca's coldness, began to rise. Get out of my way! You're just a shield to him, Serena sneered, jabbing a finger into Isabel's silk-covered shoulder. A pretty, polished shield, but shields get dented. They get broken. You tell Luca to back off the Vitale family, or his new toy is going to be the first casualty. I am not a toy, Isabel said, her voice shaking. You are to him. You are just a thing he bought. The door to the lounge swung open so hard it hit the marble wall with a crack. Luca stood there. He did not look at Serena. His gaze was locked on Isabel's pale face, the shimmering tears in her eyes, and the single, painted nail that Serena still had pressed into her shoulder. The temperature in the room dropped 30 degrees. Serena, Luca said. His voice was terrifyingly quiet. It was the voice from the restaurant in Queens. Get your hand off my wife! Serena snatched her hand back as if she had been burned. Luca, we were just talking. Girl talk. No, Luca said, stepping into the room. He walked past Serena as if she were a piece of furniture and went straight to Isabel. He scanned her face, his eyes searching for any harm. Isabel was trembling, the adrenaline crash hitting her, making her weak. Luca. He did not speak to her. He simply bent, wrapped one arm around her back, the other under her knees, and lifted her into his arms. He held her against his chest as if she weighed nothing. Then he turned. He looked at Serena Vitale, who had gone pale. "You will leave this building," he said, his voice a dead-level command. "You will go to your father. You will tell him that if he ever sends a message to me through her again, I will burn his casino to the ground. She's not yours to threaten. She's not yours to speak to. She's not yours to look at." He turned and walked out of the bathroom, carrying Isabel straight through the heart of the gala. The orchestra music stuttered. 1,000 whispers erupted. He ignored them all. He walked through the stunned crowd, his face a mask of cold fury, kicked open a side exit, and carried her down the service stairs into the cold night. The moment the penthouse door clicked shut, the adrenaline turned to fire. "Put me down!" Isabel scrambled out of his arms, landing unsteadily on the marble floor. She was shaking with fury. "She will not touch you again." His voice was clipped. "That is not the point," she shouted. "How dare you? How dare she? You carried me out of there like I was a porcelain doll, like I was a prize you had just won at the fair. You humiliated me to protect me. You were trembling. You were scared. I was angry," she yelled, her voice cracking. "Do you not see the difference? You made me a target, Luca. Serena was right. I am just a shield. I am the bait in your power game. Do not touch my property. Is that what I am to you? I am trying to keep you alive," he roared back, his own control finally snapping. The king was gone. The terrified man from the lake house was back, his eyes blazing. By owning me? By putting guards on my door? By telling me who I can and cannot speak to? By ignoring what happened at the lake? By acting like I do not exist? By treating me like a thing? "Yes!" he yelled, his voice breaking. He slammed his fist against the solid steel of the wall, the impact echoing through the silent apartment. "Yes! Because I do not know how to do it any other way. I do not know how to protect you without owning you." The admission hung in the air, raw and bleeding. He sank onto the edge of a minimalist sofa, his head falling into his hands, his shoulders, which always seemed to carry the weight of the city, were slumped. "I do not know how to be, soft, like you asked," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I do not know how. The moment I am, the world comes in. My father, your father, Serena Vitali, they all come in. The only way I know how to keep people safe is to build a fortress and lock them inside. The only way I know how to love is to control." He looked up at her, his eyes destroyed. "I am trying, Isabel, I am trying, but I am terrified. I let you in. At the lake, I let myself feel real, and the very next day, your father tried to destroy you, the world I live in. It eats soft things alive." Her anger vanished, washed away by a profound, aching sorrow. This was the core of him. This was the scar left by the broken bottle. She went to him. She sat down on the sofa, not touching him, just being near. "You did not just lock me in, Luca," she whispered. "You locked yourself out. What happened at the lake? You ran from me because I said it was real." "I ran because it was real," he admitted, his voice cracking. "And real is a weakness I cannot afford. It is a liability." "It is not a weakness," she said, and she finally reached out and touched his hand. His skin was cold. "It is the only thing that is strong. Your control. That is the weakness. That is the fear. What we had, that was strong." He turned his hand over and gripped hers, his fingers lacing with hers, desperate and tight. I am sorry for ignoring you, for being cold. I thought if I kept you at a distance, they would not see you as my heart. But I was wrong. They already do." Tears streamed down her face, the tears she had held back in the bathroom, at the gala, for weeks. He reached up, his other hand coming to her face, his rough thumb brushing the wetness from her cheek with a reverence that broke her. "Do not," he choked out. "Please, do not cry." She cried harder, a sob escaping her, and he pulled her into him. She buried her face in his chest, her arms wrapping around his waist, clinging to him. He held her, one hand cradling the back of her head, his chin resting on her hair, his arms a fortress. But this time, it was a warm one. They did not make love. They did something far more intimate. They simply held each other on the sofa, in the dark. As the glittering, violent city watched from beyond the glass, they held each other tightly, two survivors, as the world tried to pull them apart. The FBI came for her 2 days later. They did not come to the penthouse. They knew better. They came to her foundation. 2 agents, a man and a woman, sat in her small, paint-splattered office. They were polite, professional. Their smiles did not reach their eyes. "Miss Marquette, thank you for seeing us," said Agent Harris. "We know this must be a difficult time for you." "It is. Busy," Isabel said, her hands clasped on her desk. "We are concerned about your impending marriage," Agent Chen said, leaning forward. "We have reason to believe your father's recent outbursts are not without merit. My father is a desperate man." "He is," Harris agreed. "But Luca de Rossi is a dangerous one. We've been building a RICO case against his organization for 3 years. Racketeering, extortion, conspiracy, wire fraud. He is a legitimate businessman," Isabel said. The lie felt foreign on her tongue. "We know about the contract, Miss Marquette," Chen said, his voice full of false sympathy. "We know it is a 1-year deal. We have a source who confirms the annulment date is already set. We know he is using you for political cover. You are a victim here. You are being coerced. They saw her just like everyone else, a victim, a pawn, weak. You can help us, Isabel," Harris said, her voice dropping. "And you can help yourself. Your father's legal troubles, your own inheritance fight. We can make those problems disappear. We just need your testimony. Confirm that this marriage is a sham. Confirm that you have witnessed his criminal activities. Turn on him. Save herself. It was the smart play. It was the key to her old cage. She thought of Luca, his head in his hands. I do not know how to protect you without owning you." "No," she said. The agents blinked. "No? I love him." The words came out, and she realized, with a shocking, terrifying clarity, that they were true. "I am marrying Luca de Rossi because I love him. My father is a liar, and this meeting is over. You can speak to my fiancé's lawyers." She stood up. The agent's polite masks vanished. "You're making a grave mistake, Miss Marquette," Harris said. "When he is done with you, he will discard you, and we will not be here to pick up the pieces. Get out of my office." They left. Isabel sank into her chair, her entire body shaking. She had done it. She had lied to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She had crossed a line. She was no longer a Marquette. She was his. She told him everything that night, about the journalist's phone call, about the FBI, about the lie she told. He listened, his face an impassive mask, until she finished. "You lied to them," he said. "Yes." "For me?" "Yes." He stood up. He did not speak. He walked to a massive abstract painting on his office wall. He pressed his palm to the corner. A panel slid open, revealing a high-security keypad. He entered a long code, then pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner. A section of the wall receded with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a walk-in vault. "Come here," he said. She followed him inside. It was not just cash, it was racks of hard drives, thick, leather-bound ledgers, stacks of passports under a dozen different names, and weapons, handguns, rifles, all neatly racked. He took her hand, he placed it on the biometric scanner. "Authorize," he said to the air, a soft beep. "Voice command required. Isabel de Rossi," he said. "User added." The small, synthesized voice replied. He turned to her, his eyes raw. "This is everything. The real ledgers, the offshore accounts, the blackmail on the senators, the proof of every crime I have and have not committed. This is the gun the FBI is looking for. This is the key to my entire empire." He stepped back, leaving her alone in the vault. "If you want to destroy me, you can," he said, his voice thick. "If you want to walk away, if you want to take the FBI's deal, take it all. It is yours. This is my softness. This is my trust." She looked at the weapons, the money, the secrets. She saw none of it. She saw the 9-year-old boy with the knife, finally handing it to someone else. She stepped out of the vault. She did not look back. She walked up to him, pressed her hand flat against his heart, and looked him in the eye. "I do not want to destroy you. Luca, I want to save you." He closed his eyes, his entire body shuddering, and wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her hair. She was no longer his tool. She was no longer his shield. She was his equal. The next morning, Marco released an official statement to the press. "The wedding of Mr. Luca de Rossi and Miss Isabel Marquette will take place in 2 weeks." The announcement hit the city like a bomb. The journalist's story about a fake contract was now irrelevant. Harold Marquette's legal claim on his unstable daughter was undermined, and Luca's enemies, from the Vitali family to the FBI, were suddenly, frantically on a deadline. The chaos had begun. The wedding date, set for 2 weeks away, landed on the city like a lit match. It was no longer a vague promise, a society merger. It was a deadline. And Luca's enemies, having failed to break them apart with politics and threats, responded with fire. It happened on a Tuesday. Isabel was in her studio, sketching the sharp angles of the city when the sound hit. It was not a bang. It was a deep, guttural thump, a concussion that shook the triple-paned glass in its frame. She felt it in her teeth, in the floor. Before she could stand, the door to her studio burst open. It was not Luca. It was Enzo, his face pale, his gun drawn. "Mrs. de Rossi, stay here. Do not leave this room. Do not go near the windows." "What was that? Luca, is he—" "He's fine. Stay here." The door clicked, locked from the outside. She ignored him. She ran to the door, pounding on it. "Enzo, let me out!" She heard shouting from downstairs, the distant, thin wail of sirens. This was not a cage to protect her. This was a box she would be trapped in. She ran to the private elevator, the one that required her fingerprint, and jammed her thumb against the panel. It opened. She descended into chaos. The main lobby of the penthouse was a cloud of fine white dust and gray smoke. The sprinkler system was hissing, a fine mist raining down on the marble. The entire east-facing wall of glass was gone, shattered, revealing the cold blue sky. Luca was standing near the wreckage, untouched, not a speck of dust on his dark suit. He was staring down at the street, his body rigid, his face carved from ice. "Luca!" she screamed, running to him. He put an arm out, stopping her, his eyes never leaving the scene below. "Do not come closer." She followed his gaze. On the street, 20 stories down, was a scene from a war. His armored town car, the one she herself sometimes used, was a mangled, burning husk of black metal. Firefighters were dousing the flames. And next to it, partially covered by a tarp, was a body. "It was for me," he said. His voice was hollow, a dead sound. "A pressure bomb, wired to the engine block. I was supposed to be in that car 5 minutes ago. But you... What happened?" Marco called with a file. "I sent Angelo down to have the car running." He finally looked at her, his eyes black holes. Angelo. He was 22. He had a son. Isabel felt her stomach heave. Angelo. The young, smiling guard who always told her to have a nice day, who had shown her a picture of his baby boy just last week. Luca had switched cars. Angelo had not. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This was not an attack on De Rossi Holdings. This was not a business move. This was an answer to Serena Vitali's threat. They were not aiming for the king. They were aiming for the king's heart. They were trying to show him what he could lose. They were trying to show him her. She was no longer a distant figure, a shield. She was the soft spot. She was the liability. She was the target. Her father chose that moment to strike. The call came 2 days later on her old phone, the Marquette phone she kept in a drawer. The penthouse was on suffocating lockdown. Luca was a ghost, a cold, silent fury, closeted with Marco and men whose faces she did not recognize. He was hunting. "Isabel?" Her father's voice was a strained, desperate whisper. "What do you want?" "Issy, my God, did you hear what happened? A car bomb. He's going to get you killed. You have to get out of there." "I'm not leaving my fiancé." "He is not your fiancé. He is your jailer," Harold pleaded. "Listen to me. I have a deal. I have been speaking with the FBI. They are ready to move on him. They just need a witness. They need you." She was silent, her blood turning to ice. They will wipe the slate clean, Issy, for both of us. My investigation, well, gone. Your inheritance. Secured. They will clear the Marquette name. We can be a family again, like we were. Before all this, just say the word. Testify that this whole thing was a sham, that he forced you, that he assaulted me. You are a victim, darling. They will protect you. He was offering her the past, her old life, her old cage, the one she understood. Where? She whispered, her voice tight. The St. Regis. The King Cole Bar. Tomorrow. 2:00. Just come, darling. Just hear them out. Please. It is our only way out. She was conflicted, not because she believed him, but because he was offering her an identity she had lost. The good daughter. The victim. She met him. She lied to Enzo, telling him she was meeting a curator for her foundation, a name Luca had already vetted and cleared. The bar was dark, smelling of old leather and older money. Her father was sitting in a booth, a highball in his shaking hand. He looked small, old and terrified. Darling, he said, trying to smile, his eyes darting around. You look pale. Is he hurting you? He's protecting me, she said, her voice flat. What is this? Father, a setup? Are the agents here? No, just us. I wanted to talk to you first, to convince you. He reached across the table, his hand clammy. This is your last chance. You walk away from him. You are a Marquette again. We can restore everything. You can have your life back. My life, she said, the coldness in her voice surprising her. What life was that? The one where you paraded me in front of your donors? The one where I was your, secret weapon? His face flushed, an ugly, mottled red. The desperation made him cruel. You are an ungrateful child. After everything I gave you, the clothes, the schools, the name? You were nothing until I put you in those rooms. You were just a pawn with curves, and you played your part well. Now, I am telling you to play this one. A pawn with curves. It was the most honest thing he had ever said to her. It was the truth of her entire existence, summed up in one vulgar, pathetic phrase. She stood up. Her hands were not shaking. Goodbye, Father. Isabel, do not walk away from me. I am trying to save you. She walked out of the bar, through the opulent lobby, and into the waiting town car. The door shut, and the steel composure she had worn like armor finally cracked. She broke. She pulled out her phone, the encrypted one, and hit the only number on her speed dial. He answered before the first ring finished. Where are you? His voice was not a question. It was a razor. Luca, she sobbed, the name a broken thing. A pause. The silence on the other end was more terrifying than a yell. Isabel, where are you? The St. Regis. I saw my father. Luca, stay in the car. Lock the doors. The line went dead. She huddled in the back seat, ugly, gasping sobs tearing from her. The driver staring straight ahead, his face a mask. She had lied to Luca. She had met her father. She had broken his trust. It took less than 5 minutes. A black armored SUV, identical to the one that had burned, screeched to a halt, blocking the town car. Luca burst from the passenger side. He was not in a suit. He was in dark jeans and a black cashmere sweater, as if he had run straight from the penthouse. He ripped open her door. His eyes scanned her face, seeing the tear tracks, the red-rimmed eyes, the utter brokenness. A muscle in his jaw leaped. He did not speak to her. He looked at his driver. Keep her here. Then he turned and walked into the hotel. Harold Marquette was still in the booth, signaling for another drink. Luca appeared in front of him like a wraith. Harold's face went white. You cannot be here. Luca leaned forward, planting his hands flat on the polished wood of the table. His voice was a dead, quiet whisper that cut through the bar's discreet murmur. She's in my car, he said. She's crying because of you. She is my daughter, Harold blustered, his voice thin with fear. I was trying to save her from you. You animal. She is not your daughter, Luca whispered, the words a lethal promise. She is my wife, and you just lost the privilege of speaking her name. You will withdraw the petition. You will call your contacts at the FBI and tell them your daughter is no longer cooperating, and then you will disappear. You cannot threaten me. Luca smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Isabel had ever seen. I am not. I am making a vow. If she sheds one more tear because of you, if you call her, if you think her name, you will be missing by morning. I will erase you from every ledger, every phone book, and every memory. I will wipe the Marquette name from this city, and I will start with you. Am I clear? Harold could only nod, his body paralyzed. Luca straightened up. He adjusted his cuffs. He walked out of the bar, leaving her father a shivering, broken man. He got back into the car. He said one word to the driver, "Go." Then he turned to Isabel. He unbuckled his seatbelt, pulled her across the console, and gathered her into his lap, holding her against his chest as if she were a child. He did not care that the driver was watching in the rearview mirror. He just held her, his hand cradling the back of her head, his face buried in her hair. "I am sorry," she whispered, her voice muffled against his sweater. "I'm so sorry. I lied. I should not have gone." "Shh," he murmured, his voice thick. "You did nothing wrong. You have nothing to be sorry for. He is the one who will be sorry. I never wanted any of this," she sobbed, her fingers twisting in his sweater. "I never wanted the power or the money. I just wanted to matter to someone. I just wanted to not be a pawn." He held her tighter, his throat working. He pulled back just enough to see her face. His own eyes were raw, his control broken. He whispered, the words torn from the deepest part of him, "You matter to me." He looked at her, his dark eyes filled with a truth he was no longer fighting. "You are the only thing that matters." And he leaned down and kissed her forehead. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of consecration. It was a brand. It was the vow the world would never hear. After that, the wedding preparations became real. The contract, the annulment, the pretense, it all burned away in the wreckage of the car bomb and the ashes of her father's betrayal. A world-renowned couturier, flown in from Milan, turned her studio into a fitting room. Isabel stood on a pedestal, draped in ivory silk. The dress was not what she would have pictured. It was not soft or romantic. It was strong. It had long, fitted sleeves, a high, structured collar, and a back that plunged with defiant elegance. It was the dress of a queen. Luca walked in. He stopped, his breath catching in his throat. "It is perfect," he said, his voice rough. He dismissed the fitters with a wave of his hand. When they were alone, he walked to her. He did not touch her. He just touched the silk on her shoulder, his expression full of a reverence that made her heart ache. "We are writing our own vows," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," she said. That night, they sat in his office, not as a boss in his contract, but as partners. They shared a bottle of wine, their feet propped up on his desk, laughing as they tried to find words that were not cliches. They were no longer sleeping in separate suites. She had moved into his room. Their nights were not filled with the desperate, accidental passion of the lake house, but with a deep, clinging intimacy, a quiet holding, a desperate need to feel the other one breathing in the dark. The world, however, was not waiting. "The chatter is bad, Luca," Marco said in a meeting she was now part of. "The Vitalis are furious. Your threat to Serena, It was a declaration of war. They are planning to hit the wedding." "Let them try," Luca said, cleaning a handgun on his desk. "The church will have more guards than guests. It is not just a physical threat," Marco countered. "They are coordinating with that journalist, the one who tried to blackmail Isabel. The plan is to leak the original contract to the FBI, along with falsified evidence that Isabel was going to testify against you. They are going to get the feds to raid the church. They want to arrest you at the altar. They want to humiliate you, and they want to frame her as the one who betrayed you." Luca's hand stopped moving. He looked at Isabel. The color drained from his face. This was his nightmare. They were using her, his heart, as the weapon. He made his decision. He went to her that night, as she was brushing her hair. "We have to call it off," he said, his voice flat. She turned, the brush freezing. "What? No, the invitations are sent. It is in 3 days." "It is too dangerous," he said, his back to her. "I cannot protect you. Not there. Not in front of 500 people." She saw it. The old fear. The boy with the broken bottle. The man who protected things by locking them in a fortress. He was trying to lock her away again. She walked to him. She stood in front of him, forcing him to look at her. She put her hands on his chest, feeling his heart hammer. "Luca, look at me." He met her eyes. His were full of terror. "You are not my owner. You are my partner," she said, her voice low and fierce. "They are not coming for you. They are coming for us. If we hide, they win. If we run, they win. I will not be the reason you are humiliated. I will not be the reason you are killed." He shot back, his hands gripping her arms. "I will not let you be destroyed," she countered. "We walk through the fire together. Or not at all." He stared at her. This fragile porcelain woman who had a spine of pure, unbreakable steel. She was not his weakness. She was his strength. He leaned down and crushed his mouth to hers. It was not a kiss of tenderness. It was a kiss of equals. A kiss of warriors. A kiss that said, "Then let them come, together." He breathed against her lips. The day before the wedding, the penthouse was a fortress, buzzing with energy. Security sweeps, final preparations. Isabel felt like she was living in a beautiful, high-strung dream. "I need to breathe," she told Luca. "I am going to the shelter, just for an hour. I need to see the kids. I need to paint." His first instinct was to say no, but he looked at her, at the strength in her eyes. "Together." "Fine," he said. "Enzo. And 3 men. You will not leave her side. You sweep the building before she enters. You wait outside her door. 1 hour. I will be fine," she promised, kissing him. "I love you. I love you," he said. The words still new, still tasting like a miracle on his tongue. 1 hour. She left. An hour later, Luca's phone rang. It was Enzo. His voice was not calm. It was strangled with panic. "Boss, is she with you?" "Boss, she is gone." "What do you mean, gone?" Luca roared, standing so fast his chair crashed against the wall. "You were outside the door." "She never made it to the door," Enzo yelled back. "We lost her between the car and the front entrance. It was clean. They must have been watching us for weeks. We found this." Luca was already sprinting for the elevator, his heart a cold, dead stone in his chest. He hit the garage. Enzo was standing there, pale as a ghost, in the exact spot where the car had been. He was holding up a small, slim object. It was her phone. The screen was spiderwebbed, crushed, as if it had been thrown from a speeding car. She was gone, for a single agonizing second. Luca de Rossi did not breathe. He stood in the concrete garage, the crushed phone in Enzo's hand, and the world went silent. The city noise, the sirens, his own heartbeat, all of it vanished. There was only a cold, white, silent void. Then the void filled with ice. He did not yell. He did not rage. The boy with the knife, the man at the lake, the lover, they all disappeared. The monster, the king, the cold, calculating strategist he had built himself to be, took over. "Marco," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He was already walking to the SUV. "Lock down the city, every bridge, every tunnel. Activate every camera, public and private. I want eyes on every street from here to the Bronx. Call the Port Authority. Shut it down. Nothing leaves this island." He climbed into the passenger seat, his face a mask of stone. "Enzo, get the men. All of them, get the weapons from the vault," he commanded, his voice flat. "This is not a negotiation. This is a recovery. Call Sophia. Tell her to go to my mother's. Tell her to lock the doors and not open them for anyone, not even me. Not until she has Isabel on the phone." "Boss? Who?" Enzo asked, his voice shaking. Luca looked at him, his eyes black and dead. "Vitali. Who else has the arrogance? He thinks he is a king. He thinks he can touch what is mine. He thinks he can use her to start a war." Luca smiled, a gesture that was pure venom. "He is going to get one." Isabel woke to the smell of rust and cold water. Her head throbbed, a dull, heavy ache behind her eyes. She was in a dark room, her hands tied behind her to a cold, metal chair. A single, bare bulb clicked on, blinding her. "The princess is awake," a voice sneered. Serena Vitali stepped out of the shadows. She was not in a gala dress. She was in black tactical pants and a tight shirt, her face bare of makeup, her eyes hard. "Serena?" Isabel rasped, her throat dry. "This is insane. He will kill you." "He will try," Serena corrected, circling her. "That is the point. My father, my brothers, they are old-fashioned. They wanted to wait. They wanted to hit your little wedding. I told them no. You do not wait for a king to build his fortress. You burn it down while he is still gathering the stones." "So what is this?" Isabel asked, testing the ropes. They were thick, cutting into her wrists. "Ransom," Serena laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Ransom. We do not want his money. We want his head. You see, when we threatened you, he declared war. When he tried to protect you, he showed us his weakness. And when he moved up the wedding, he gave us our deadline." Serena pulled a high-tech camera on a tripod from the corner. "This is much better than a bomb at a church. This is personal. In exactly 2 hours, we are sending your fiancé a link, a private live stream. He will get to watch, in real time, as we execute his pretty political wife. He will go blind with rage. He will come for us, not with a plan, but with his gut. And when he comes, he will be walking into an army. He will die, and the Vitali family will finally take this city." Isabel felt the cold dread, but beneath it, the familiar, defiant anger stirred. "He's not that stupid." "Oh, but he is," Serena whispered, leaning in, her face inches from Isabel's. "About you. He's a complete sentimental fool. You are the pawn, darling, but this time, you are the one that ends the game." Serena struck her, a hard, backhanded slap that snapped Isabel's head to the side, her lips splitting, the taste of blood filling her mouth. "That is for the bathroom. The next one will be for my father." Luca's penthouse office was the war room. The wall of monitors was no longer security feeds. It was a grid of the entire city. Marco was at the main terminal, his fingers a blur, his face pale. "They are smart. Luca, no credit cards, no known vehicles. They used a decoy van that we found burning in Queens. They are not on the street." "Then they are off the street," Luca said. He was pulling on a black Kevlar vest over his sweater. He checked the magazine of a matte black handgun, the slide clicking home with a sound of pure finality. "Where does Vitali operate? Where does he feel safe?" "He owns a dozen warehouses in Red Hook," Marco said. "Import-export, all legitimate fronts. One of them is not," Luca said. "One of them is wired for a broadcast." He looked at Marco. "Find it. Find the one with the dedicated, high-speed fiber line, the one that is not sharing a signal. Find the one that is drawing more power than a shipping office should." Marco's fingers flew. Searching. "I have it. A cold storage facility. Pier 4. It is drawing enough power to light a stadium." "That is our girl," Luca said. He turned to Enzo, who stood with 20 men, all armed, all in black, all silent. "We are not knocking. We are not negotiating. This is surgical. We go in, we secure the asset, and we eliminate the threat. Anyone who is not her is a target. Am I clear?" The men nodded. "And Enzo," Luca said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "Serena, she is mine." Isabel was fading. They had hit her again. Her ribs ached, and her vision was blurring. She was cold. She tried to think of Luca, of the lake house, of the fire. She tried to hold on. "It is time," Serena said, checking her watch. "Send him the link." A man in the corner with a laptop nodded. "Link is live." "Showtime," Serena smiled, pulling a long, thin knife from her belt. "Let us see how fast the king can run." In the back of the armored SUV, Luca's laptop pinged. The link appeared. He clicked it. His blood turned to ice. It was her, chained to the chair. Her face bruised, her lips split, but her eyes were still defiant. They were staring straight at the camera. "Boss," Enzo started. "I see her," Lucas said. He forwarded the feed to Marco. "Trace it. Confirm." "It is the warehouse. Luca," Marco's voice came over the comms. "Confirmed. They are broadcasting from the same IP. He's watching," Serena said to Isabel, tilting her chin up toward the camera. "Say hello, Mrs. De Rossi." Isabel spat the blood from her mouth onto the floor. "Go to hell!" "Brave," Serena sneered, pressing the tip of the knife to Isabel's cheek, just hard enough to draw a single, perfect drop of blood. "Let us see how brave you are when I start taking pieces." "We are 2 minutes out," Lucas said, his voice a dead calm, though his heart was a roaring furnace. He watched the drop of blood well up on her skin, and the last, thin thread of his control snapped. The assault was not an assault. It was an execution. The 2 guards at the loading bay doors never heard them. Luca's men, moving with the practiced silence of ghosts, disabled them with suppressed weapons before they could raise an alarm. Enzo's team breached the main floor, a blur of black shadows, while Luca's team, just 4 men, went straight for the broadcast room. Serena was monologuing. "You see, your mistake was thinking he was a man. He's just—" The door to the room exploded inward, blown off its hinges by a breach charge. The man at the laptop went down before he could turn. Serena spun, her knife raised, her eyes wide with shock. Luca stood in the doorway, framed by smoke and a terrible, cold light. He did not have his gun out. His hands were empty. "You," Serena gasped. "No, you were not supposed to. We had hours." "You miscalculated," Luca said, his voice a low, guttural growl. He stepped into the room. He saw Isabel, bleeding but breathing, and the rage he had held in check became a pure, white-hot nova. Serena, desperate, grabbed Isabel by the hair, yanking her head back, pressing the knife to her throat. "Stop, stop, or I will kill her, I swear to God. Luca." "Get out, Enzo," Luca said to the man behind him. "Boss, no. Get out, she is mine." Enzo and his men reluctantly stepped back, securing the perimeter. It was just them, the 2 rivals, and the woman between them. "Let her go. Serena," Luca said, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. "I will kill her," Serena shrieked, her hand trembling, the knife biting into Isabel's skin. "No, you will not," Luca said, "because you want to see my face when you do. You want to see me break, but you do not have the right." He took another step. "I am warning you." "He will not stop," Isabel choked out, her voice a raw whisper. "He will never stop." "Shut up," Serena screamed. In that second of distraction, Luca moved. He was not a man. He was a predator. He crossed the 10 feet in a single and impossible blur of motion. He did not go for the knife. He went for the wrist. There was a sound. A sharp, sickening snap of bone. The knife clattered to the floor. Serena screamed, a high, thin sound, as Luca grabbed her by the throat with his other hand, lifting her off the ground, slamming her against the concrete wall. He squeezed, his face inches from hers, his eyes black and devoid of all humanity. "You touched her," he whispered, the words a death rattle. "You put your hands on her." Serena clawed at his wrist, her feet kicking, her face turning a deep, dark purple. "Luca, please." Isabel gasped from the chair. He heard her. He looked at her, at her bruised face, her terrified eyes. He looked back at Serena. He had promised his father he would kill him. He had promised Harold he would erase him. He looked at Isabel, the woman who had kissed his scar, the woman who had told him he was not a monster. With a final guttural roar of disgust, he threw Serena to the ground. She landed in a heap, choking, sobbing, her wrist bent at an impossible angle. "Enzo," Luca said, not looking back, "get this trash out of my sight. Send her back to her father. Alive. I want him to see what happens." He turned to Isabel. The monster vanished. He was just a man, his hands shaking, his breathing ragged. He fumbled with the knots on her wrists, his fingers thick and clumsy. The ropes fell away. She was free, but she did not move. She just looked up at him, her eyes wide, tears streaming through the blood and the dirt. "You came," she gasped, the words barely a breath. He knelt before her, his heart breaking. He reached out, his hand trembling, and gently brushed the matted hair from her face. "You are my wife," he whispered, his own voice thick with an emotion he could not name. He leaned in and pressed his forehead to hers, his eyes squeezed shut. "Of course I came." He lifted her into his arms, her body light, her hands clinging weakly to his vest. He carried her out of the warehouse, into the flashing red and blue lights of the arriving police. Cops, he had called himself, to clean up his mess. He did not look back. The wedding, the next day, was not postponed. It was moved. Not the grand cathedral, but the small, private chapel in the penthouse, the one his mother used. The guest list was cut from 500 to 10. His mother, his sister, Marco, Enzo. Isabel stood in the doorway, her hand on Marco's arm. He was giving her away. The long-sleeved, high-collared ivory dress was a work of art. It was strong. It was regal. And it was a beautiful, defiant shield. It covered the dark, ugly bruises on her arms, her ribs. It covered the bandage on her wrist. The only thing it could not hide was the small, healing cut on her cheek, just below her eye. But she did not look like a victim. She looked like a survivor. She looked like a queen. Her eyes found Luca, standing at the small altar. He was immaculate in a black tuxedo, his face clean-shaven, his hair perfectly combed, but his eyes never left hers. They were filled with a raw, public adoration that stunned the small room into silence. Marco placed her hand in Luca's. His grip was warm, steady. The priest spoke, but they did not hear him. It was time for the vows. Isabel turned, taking both his hands. Her voice was soft, but it did not tremble. "This started as a lie," she said, her eyes locked on his. "It was a contract, a prison. I was a pawn, and you were a king, but you showed me your scars, and you let me show you mine. This may have started fake, but it was always real to me." A tear tracked down Luca's cheek. He did not wipe it away. He lifted her left hand, the one that was not bandaged, and slid a diamond onto her finger. It was not a gaudy, show-off stone. It was a flawless, blue-white emerald cut, clean and sharp and unbreakable, like her. "I was taught that softness is a weakness," he said, his voice rough. "I was taught that love is a liability. I lived in the dark because I was afraid of what the light would show. And then you came. You were not afraid of the monster. You just held my hand. Isabel, this started as a deal for power, but you became my conscience. You became my heart." He leaned in, his vow a whisper for her alone. "So let's live like it is real. Every day. Forever. You may kiss your bride," the priest said, long after they already had. Luca cupped her face, his thumbs gentle, and kissed her. It was not the desperate, consuming kiss of the studio. It was not the tender, healing kiss of the car. It was a promise. It was a vow. It was a claiming. The city, which had been expecting a war, a cancellation, an arrest at the altar, was stunned. The evening news ran only one photo, leaked by Marco, the mafia boss and the heiress, kissing in the chapel, his hand on her waist, hers on his heart. They were claiming each other, not just with power, but with a tenderness that was more shocking than any car bomb. That night, the penthouse was quiet. The guards were gone, relegated to the lobby. The family was gone. It was just them. Luca had a single song playing on a turntable, a low, bluesy ballad. Isabel had taken off the heavy dress and was in a simple, white silk robe. He was in his shirt sleeves, his tie gone, his feet bare. He held out his hand. "May I have this dance, Mrs. De Rossi?" she smiled, placing her hand in his. "You may, Mr. De Rossi." They danced in the middle of the living room, in front of the new wall of glass, the city lights a million miles below. They were barefoot, quiet, moving slowly in a small circle. He held her close, his chin resting on her hair. He was not a king. He was not a monster. He was just a man, holding his wife. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice thick, his lips brushing her temple. "You saved me from living empty." She tilted her head back, looking up at him. She lifted her hand and pressed it to his chest, over his heart. She could feel it beating, strong and steady beneath her palm. "And you," she whispered, kissing the scar on his collarbone through his shirt. You saved me from being invisible." He stopped dancing. He just held her. He looked down at her hand, the one pressed against his heart. Slowly, deliberately. He placed his own hand over hers, holding it there, locking it in place, where she now belonged. Real, forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We are so grateful to have you here. Please, take a moment to comment and let us know where in the world you are listening from. We hope you enjoyed this journey. If you did, please consider subscribing to Mafia Romance Stories for many more to come. We would love to hear your thoughts, so share them with us in English in the comments below.